dramatic reversal. Wayne County Election Board Republicans have rescinded their votes, certifying the results in Michigan last night.
Democrats want to get to the bottom of all the irregularities, all the problems we saw in the 2020 election.
New photos showing California Governor Gavin Newsom's no mask, no social distancing.
How dumb do you have to be? It's so easy to tell other people what to do with their lives when you're not directly affected by it.
Are the schools going to open tomorrow in New York City?
First of all, let's try not to be obnoxious.
Parents are still confused.
Oh, they're not confused. You're confused. The schools are open.
Unfortunately, we do need to close our schools.
We now have 2 safe and highly effective vaccines that could be authorized and ready to distribute within
November 19, 2020. Welcome aboard, folks. It is the real field temperature outside is 26 degrees. And I know. And you know what today is? Today is Thursday. And we are 1 week away from Thanksgiving. And I don't know about you, Ainsley and Brian, but I am ready for some turkey and some pumpkin pie.
I think we all are. We're ready to celebrate, please. We just want to be with off work for a few days, even though we love our jobs and we're grateful for them. But to be around family and just breathe for a minute. The election's over. We're all affected by coronavirus. That Rockefeller Christmas tree, Brian and Steve, it reminds me when I was in 3rd grade, my dad brought home the worst tree. It had holes all in it. And we were trying to turn it so the holes were not seen when you walked in the front door. My mom couldn't believe it. Dad said he felt so sorry for the tree. So as kids, we thought, oh, we have the best dad. He's so nice. And now as an adult, I realize he probably got it at a discount.
A Christmas tree on sale.
Yeah, I guess that's what New York was doing. I guess the New Yorkers hopefully got a discount because they can't even pick out a tree. They can't run the city. They destroyed it. They can't run a state. He's destroying it. They can't even pick out a Christmas tree. And by the way, on Thanksgiving, I'm all for it, except for if many of our political leaders have our way, we won't be celebrating it. That's the only thing different about this year, which might be interesting. Or if we try to celebrate it, they could break down our door and arrest us all. But I digress.
Like I said, I'm ready for some turkey and some pumpkin pie.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Meanwhile, the U.S. has surpassed 250,000 coronavirus deaths, a staggering number, as city and state leaders all across the country enacting lockdowns ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday. Minnesota's governor battening down the hatches this morning. All bars, restaurants, entertainment venues, and gyms are going to close for a month, Ainsley.
Wow. Wow. And in Kansas, a mask mandate goes into effect in all public places. And the country's largest school district in New York City closing in-school classes today. And Governor Andrew Cuomo getting hostile while discussing the guidelines with reporters.
What are you talking about? You're now going to override. We did it already. That's the law. An orange zone and a red zone. Follow the facts.
I'm still confused.
Well, then you're confused.
I'm confused. And
then I'll tell you what, Jimmy.
Parents are still confused as well. The schools in
they're
New York
not
City
confused.
Tomorrow.
You're confused.
No, I think parents are very confused as well.
Read the law, and you won't be confused. Schools are open by state law.
Will they be open tomorrow? That's the question. I think Jimmy's correct in asking that question. I don't think it's obnoxious at all.
Well, I don't really care what you think.
Okay. All right. There's a little problem with the governor's arrogance, which is pretty much a daily occurrence because no one reined him in. He's too busy on a book tour on how to handle a pandemic with over 30,000 dead to understand that he was flat out wrong again. Because even though they're in the same party, the mayor and governor don't talk. The mayor shows up 6 hours late for a press conference, at which time he makes an announcement after school. Think about this if you're a parent. No school for the foreseeable future because they claim the percentage of people testing positive is over 3%. Others say it's 2.5. Now, that Wall Street Journal reporter that asked the question is Jimmy Vielkind. He asked a great question. It was followed up by Jesse McKinley from the New York Times. And guess what? The questions were, you shut down New York City. The governor's response was, no, we didn't. How dare you question me? Right. He made a huge mistake. Again, the mayor doing something without coordination with the state is inexcusable again. Even if you were in different parties, you should be on the same page.
Right
after all, he wrote a book about how to do it, Ainsley. He should know that coordination would be key, wouldn't he?
Well, right after that press conference, de Blasio then closed all the schools. So Cuomo was saying, we're not going to close the schools, and then de Blasio, right after that press conference.
But he was meeting with state officials at the time. Who were the state officials? Were they not the governor of New York State? And how does he do that without telling the governor? And what about those parents that have to decide what they're doing for daycare today?
Here's the thing. The mayor and the governor actually did speak before that press conference. And the mayor told the governor he was going to close the schools. But as we just saw right there, the governor feigned surprise when he was asked about the school chancellor's email. See, before the press conference, the chancellor had sent an email out to principals saying, we're going to be closed tomorrow. And so the report, that's what that exchange was all about. You know, what's the deal with closing the schools? Here's what it all comes down to is the schools are going to close today, and we do not know here in New York City when and if they will close again. Go back a couple of months ago where it was back and forth with the teachers union. We don't want to have in-person learning because we feel that the teachers would be at risk. So what did the mayor do? He decided that he was going to put a 3% positivity rate on the metric. And essentially, if there was a 7-day rolling average at 3%, close the schools. The WHO says if there's going to be any number, it should be 5%. The big question now is, you know, what exactly is going to change for the schools to open? What's interesting, and this is
there's many big questions. That's just one of them.
Well, that's the biggest one. What's it going to take? Because we don't know. No class. That's essentially what it says in the New York Post. And Ainsley, the editorial from Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times actually said Trump was right and many Democrats wrong about closing schools. What did he write?
He wrote, some things are true, even though President Trump says them. Trump has been demanding for months that schools reopen, and on that, he seems to have been largely right. Schools, especially elementary schools, do not appear to have been major sources of coronavirus transmission, and remote learning is proving to be catastrophe for many low-income children. Right. Yet America is shutting schools. Granted, the United States has done such a poor job of controlling the virus that as the pandemic rages across the country, it may be necessary to shut some schools, but that should be the last resort. He goes on, Brian and Steve, to talk about this English teacher down in Florida. She says, I've taught in low-income school districts for 25 years, and I can attest that remote schooling is failing our children. She goes on to say many low-income families don't have computers, they don't have Wi-Fi. Right. When the parents have to go to work, they're not making a lot of money because a lot of them have lost their jobs during coronavirus. The kids have to miss class because they have to babysit other siblings, or they have to go and work and make money for their family.
Let me explain. It's 99.8% survival if you do get it. Kids are almost not in danger at all. And the risk of these kids going home far transcends, and the lack of learning far transcends any risk of them going to school. And we should have learned that by now because we're being run by idiots. And this is an uncontrollable virus. If you look around the world, it keeps coming back. There's nobody who can control it. Everywhere from Russia to Germany to Australia. Meanwhile, when it comes to hypocrisy, the leading the charge head of the class is Governor Gavin Newsom. This guy who apologized and didn't even do that right for going to a restaurant, maybe the most elite restaurant in the country, that on average has a $450 a plate price fix, goes indoors with a party of 15 held by a lobbyist and a medical executive, and they hang out without masks, having a great time inches from each other. When he gets caught because someone snapped pictures, he says it was an outdoor event and I made a mistake. It was an indoor event with a chandelier. Harmeet Dillon says this about this about this whole California issue. Eating with a bunch of lobbyists at an expensive restaurant, this is at the same time that you put half of California out of work, maybe for good, add up the drinks, add up the appetizers, their meal per person was more than a monthly unemployment check. Yeah. Think about this. You can't even go to the beach outdoors. You can't do anything. And this governor, who has fires raging across the state, begging for a bailout, goes to his an area right outside his winery where his kids got got home in time from their private school to maybe even join them, and then he does this. Well, think about if you're a California resident right now.
The hypocrisy is these Democratic leaders do as I say, not as I do. So you've got Gavin Newsom at that fancy French Laundry dinner where the pre-fee is $450 a head in some cases.
Social distancing there?
According to the California Medical Association, they say state and local guidelines were followed. And the reason the California Medical Association weighed in is because the CEO of the California Medical Association, the top executive in the top advisory panel when it comes to medicine, was actually at that. So if Californians are looking for leadership when it comes to personal responsibility with the coronavirus, you really can't look at the governor because he's already apologized. I blew it. And you can't really look at the CEO of the California Medical Association or their top lobbyist, who the party was for. Dave Portnoy, who you see on Barstool Sports, he does a great pizza review, tells you exactly where the best pizzas are in the world. But in this case, he talks about one dinner party that did not involve pizza, and he had this observation about the California governor.
The most amazing thing, what you want to question what he's doing, is like, if you're going to go break and quite obviously break your own rules that everyone's suffering with, how do you let people take pictures of you? How dumb do you have to be to let people have cameras? You need a henchman to break the cameras if you're going to be that, obnoxious about it. I don't think there's inherently like bad people going around, but this, right. I truly believe that the government officials who are making these decisions, if they had a brother or sister there whose livelihoods were on the line with a business, a small business, their decisions wouldn't be the same.
Right. And then you've got, Ainsley, you've got the case where we told people yesterday about how the Independent Voter Project flew 14 California lawmakers and lawmakers from other states out to Maui, to the Fairmont Kea Lani, which is a lovely space on the North Shore of Maui. Mm-hmm. And what are they talking about? They're talking about reopening the economies during coronavirus at the same time that in their states they have travel restrictions, and they're telling people, don't fly if you don't have to, and whatever you do, don't be around people outside of your bubble because you might spread or get the coronavirus. And yet it looks like that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, rules for thee, but not for me.
Exactly.
It's practice what you preach. If you're going to tell us to do something, then you, by golly, better be doing it too, because that's not fair. And it looks like you're an elitist, and it looks like the rules don't apply to you, but they apply to everyone else. We're all suffering. Meanwhile, restaurants are closing, and he's going to the most expensive restaurant without a mask and no social distancing.
And let me just add this to California. Senator Dianne Feinstein walking around without a mask through an airport and through the state capitol. And Nancy Pelosi, who was already caught in a hair salon, was going to have a big state dinner planned for the new lawmakers. And when it was exposed, she quickly had to go cancel. Unbelievable.
Governor of Michigan, Brian, her husband went up to get his boat out. You weren't allowed to be on boats at the time, and he said, my wife's the governor. Let me have my boat.
Unbelievable.
All right, now to another top story. We're following this morning. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington as GOP members in Wayne County, Michigan, they rescind their decision to certify election results. Griff, tell us the details.
Yeah, that's right. Ainsley, Brian, Steve, good morning to you. In fact, the president fighting on virtually every battleground front now in Michigan. The two Republican canvass board members in Wayne County who opposed the certification vote before reversing under pressure because of a more than 70% discrepancy in absentee ballots are now seeking to recant that vote in affidavits. Monica Palmer says this, quote, the comments made accusations of racism and threatened me and members of my family. The other member, William Hartman, writes, I voted not to certify, and I still believe this vote should not be certified until these questions are addressed. I remain opposed to certification of the Wayne County results. So what's this mean? Well, it's a little unclear. Wayne County's results and those of Michigan's other 82 counties go to the Secretary of State, who's a Democrat, to present them to the canvass board on Monday. So we'll wait to have to find out. Now, in Wisconsin, the president's campaign is spending $3 million for a recount in Dane and Milwaukee counties. It's unlikely to overturn the results there, but it could open the door for the president to pursue other legal challenges there. Now, to the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court there agreed to take up the campaign's challenges to more than 8,000 ballots in Philadelphia. And down in Georgia, we should know the results of the historic hand recount around noon today, but we already know thousands of uncounted votes were uncovered. In Floyd and Fayette counties, more than 5,000 missed, netting more than 1,000 votes for President Trump. Now, in 2 more counties, Douglas and Walton, more ballots untallied. Meanwhile, in Wilmington, President-elect Biden blasting President Trump for holding up GSA resources. Listen.
The law says that the General Services Administration has a person who recognizes who the winner is, and then they have to have access to all the data and information that the government possesses to be prepared. And it doesn't require there to be an absolute winner. It says the apparent winner.
Finally, as the president continues contesting these results nationwide, the top Republicans on the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, led by Jim Jordan, now demanding hearings into the integrity of the election, citing the irregularities and improprieties raised by the Trump campaign. Brian Ainsley. Steve?
Wow. So the fight goes on. Thanks so much, Griff, and we'll continue to follow that. Meanwhile, 60 minutes after the hour, everyone's talking about Thanksgiving, getting together, and we're in the post-election phase, even while the President of the United States continues to fight on and make sure that every vote's counted, legal votes counted. It's pretty important when people get together, either it's in Zoom or in person, that maybe they put politics on hold. And guess what? Hollywood could possibly lead the way. An outstanding comedian, Whitney Cummings, writes this in the Daily Beast, quote, "I'm fascinated by playing devil's advocate and want to understand the people I disagree with. I don't want to dismiss and malign. I think it's very self-righteous or sanctimonious to just dismiss people we disagree with without trying to understand why they believe what they believe. I don't get it. I grew up in Washington, D.C. mostly, but also in Virginia and West Virginia. So I grew up seeing both sides and still believing different things. Even though I don't agree with somebody, I don't think they are dumb." It will be interesting to have that approach to Thanksgiving, even if you're not seeing people in person.
You know what's interesting about her story? She's a comedian, and she was also the executive producer on the Roseanne show at the time that Roseanne made those controversial comments and got fired by ABC. And so she was, this woman, Whitney Cummings, was looking at what happened, and she realized that there is value to seeing the other side. And she said as well, she said in these comments in the Daily Beast, she says she understands why people find value in Donald Trump. And she says, Ainsley, it's important to educate yourself on how essentially the other half of the United States works and feels and thinks about things, because you cannot be stuck in your own silo. You got to leave your silo every once in a while and see other people.
Yeah, I think that goes for all sides, Democrats and Republicans. And she just says, as a comedian, when I'm writing my material, I have to empathize with both sides.
Yeah.
She said, if you don't, then you risk losing half your audience, which is so true. I'm always amazed when some of these celebrities, I guess they've made so much money, they don't care what anyone thinks. But they come out and they talk about their politics, whether it's right or left. But you are ostracizing half of the country and half of your audience, the people who pay to go see you in the movies, people who buy your comedy tickets to go see you on stage. Right. Or these athletes who speak out. I mean, I know there's a place for it, but I've always thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to be a singer? Because then you don't have to be political. Everyone loves you. You entertain people. You're on stage. But so many of these singers now are getting political.
Yeah, by the way, we talked to Matthew McConaughey yesterday in a post-tape. He talks about that, the whole cancel culture thing in Hollywood, and he's willing to take it on. And it's time for people to stake back and maybe stake out the middle. I would also say this. Some people want to be singers, don't get involved. Other people want to be comedians and be on the edge. They want to push society. When Bill Burr hosts SNL, he says a bunch of things and they think, oh, he's going to get canceled. No, you can't be a comedian if you can't point out some of the ridiculous things that society is adhering to. So comedians are going to be at the tip of the spear, I think.
You know what, Brian, and you mentioned Matthew McConaughey. He told Hugh Hewitt yesterday that he would consider running for governor of Texas.
Yeah, so he talked politics with us, too.
All right, he did a couple of weeks ago. Meanwhile, it's 6:19 here in New York City, and a new report says Florida Democrats are having a post-election meltdown after having one of the party's weakest showings on Election Day. Our next guest helped lead the effort to court. Well, Democrats are in disarray down in the Sunshine State. Politico reports are having a post-election meltdown after the state party recorded one of the worst election performances in the nation. Our next guest helped lead the president's media strategy to court Latino voters in the Sunshine State, and they did turn out. A conservative media strategist, Giancarlo Sopo, joins us right now from Nashville. Giancarlo, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, going into the election, the Democrats thought they might actually have a big blue wave across the state at the state legislature level. But that just sputtered and never turned out, did it?
No. I mean, they thought they were overconfident in the polling. They thought they were going to pick up state legislature seats. They also thought that they were going to keep these 2 congressional seats in South Florida, which were held by Donna Shalala and Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. And what we saw in Florida was a big Trump red wave swept through the Sunshine State. And Latinos were a very important part of that coalition.
And what was it about Donald Trump that the Latinos appreciated?
Well, President Trump delivered the best economy in history for Hispanic Americans. He also took a very firm stance against socialism. And as the people watching at home know, Cuban Americans like me, Venezuelans, Colombians, Nicaraguans, we don't really like socialism too much.
And in fact, there's a headline in Politico yesterday. It said, "I'm not an effing socialist." Florida Democrats are having a post-election meltdown because ultimately some of the signals that national Democrats were sending out about being, defund the police and socialism, that may have worked in certain sectors, but it was a dud in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, all of the gains that the Democrats made with Hispanics in Florida since 2004 were entirely wiped out on election night. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, even young Cuban Americans who had been trending Democratic are now firmly in the Republican coalition. And that's really thanks to President Trump and his inspiring message, and also just because the Democrats engage in too many self-inflicted wounds. I mean, no one wants to be associated with socialism. We don't want Marxism. We don't want that for our country. Our parents and our families came here to live in freedom and to achieve a better life, and we want that for our children as well.
So, Giancarlo, ultimately, do you think that they got it in Washington, D.C., and they're going to go, look, you might have feelings about certain things, and they're very strong, but they are radical. Don't say them out loud.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I really don't see that happening. I mean, what should really happen is that there was a time, when the Democrats, they've always had far-left radical voices, but they used to kind of marginalize them. Mm-hmm. There's no chance of that happening. Nancy Pelosi is not going to stand up to AOC and the squad. Their party has been hijacked by neo-Marxists, and that's just a sad reality. There's not much that they can do about it because they've really just taken control of the party, and also because their allies in the media love featuring them as thought leaders of the Democratic Party. And the more that they do that, the more that they're going to continue alienating Hispanics, not just in Florida, but also throughout the country.
All right, let's see what happens as they try to figure out where to go from here. Giancarlo Sopo, we thank you very much for joining us today from Nashville.
Thank you very much.
You bet. All right, it's coming up on 6:30 here in New York City. Parents outraged after...
A Seattle mom is outraged after learning that her daughter's teacher canceled online classes because she's decided to live in the forest. The teacher writing in an email to students, quote, "I am currently living in the forest. So when our power goes out, it is for most of the day. My internet from a hotspot is enough to respond to messages, but not host live class." So what does this say about the state of education in the COVID era? Here to share what happened is mother of 3, Jenny Feldman. Good morning to you, Jenny.
Good morning.
Good morning. This got our attention because you posted a picture of that email on social media. And first of all, what's your complaint?
Yeah, I wanted to share this email not because of the specific story, but because we all know that this is happening a lot, and kids have been dealt a lot since March. My 7th grader hasn't seen a teacher face to face in 8 months. So when teachers aren't making every effort to show up for remote learning, it's subconsciously sending messages to our kids that relationship isn't important.
What does this teach our kids? It teaches them that you don't have to come to work if you don't have power. I mean, find a way, get out of the woods, right?
Yeah, I mean, parents are running around connecting our kids to online meetings. We've upgraded our internet plans. And look, I understand that a storm can knock out power and that emergencies can happen. But why are teachers not working in the school buildings that our taxpayer dollars support? Why are parents not notified when a teacher can't show up? And why is the Seattle School District not doing more to ensure that teachers have adequate internet connection?
Mm-hmm. Right. Why is that acceptable? What did the school say? Did you notify the principal?
I did, and she got back to me a day later and said that they would be meeting with the teacher.
That's all? And when was that?
That was yesterday afternoon. And,
okay. Go ahead, Jenny.
Seattle Public Schools hasn't shared any plans on when they're going to reopen their schools. And the reality is these kids are not learning at the rate that they should be.
Right. Your tax dollars are paying for these teachers and paying for these schools, and our children, we're not equipped for this. That's why we send them to school, because we're not teachers. I understand, if we need to take some time off, but because of COVID, but find a way to do it. These children are not getting an education. How is this affecting your daughter?
It's tough. She's a good student, honestly. But the reason that I wanted to share our story is that I have a lot of friends whose kids are special needs or need extra help. And this is happening to others as well. And so if my daughter is impacted, I know that others are also. So again, it wasn't so much my particular story that I wanted to get out there, but just that there's a systemic failure happening and we're not prioritizing the kids.
You're very brave to do this, because a lot of parents wouldn't do it even if they had a beef with a teacher, because they don't want it to ultimately backfire on their child. So I praise you for this, because you're feeling exactly what many Americans are feeling right now. what was the reaction? Why do you think this really resonated online with so many people?
Again, look, this is not personal, right? We're all in this together, but many parents are going through this. And when teachers are not making every effort to be professional or put the kids first, these messages are getting through to the kids, especially older children, teenagers. These relationships matter. They haven't met these teachers in person. And so remote learning, that's all they have. So I do think it resonated. I had thousands of comments on my Twitter when I shared my post. And some were negative, but many people said they had had similar experiences or they could relate. And so I wanted to share this on behalf of the kids and the families.
Okay. Well, Jenny, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much. I do want to read a statement from Seattle Public School. They sent us this. Our school districts need to use a remote learning framework for all 53,000 students in our 104 schools has brought new challenges, and it's important that the lines of communication between families and schools are open and available. I hope they resolve this, and I hope they give that teacher what she needs so that she can teach the kids. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you.
You're welcome. A progressive group aligned with AOC is calling on Joe Biden to push through their economic agenda with or without Congress. Stuart Varney is here to break down what their plan means for your wallet.
In a few hours, Georgia election officials are expected to release a report on the state's hand recount of votes. Supposed to be done last night at midnight, Ainsley.
All right, and I think the results will come out around noon, I'm hearing today. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign is pushing back as more uncounted ballots are found in 2 Georgia counties.
Yep, also writing some big checks to get something done in Wisconsin. Matt Finn is in Atlanta with the latest. Hey, Matt.
Hey, all of Georgia's 159 counties were required to submit their newly recounted numbers by 11:59 last night. Georgia's Secretary of State's office says it's now on track to certify the statewide vote by tomorrow. And then the president's campaign can request a recount if it wants. Over the past couple of days here in Georgia, the audit revealed thousands of ballots were not counted in multiple counties. The Secretary of State's office says the ballots were human error, even calling for one county's elections director to resign. Joe Biden's lead in Georgia shrank from about 15,000 to 13,000 votes, not enough to reverse the outcome. The uncounted ballots fueled more allegations of misconduct, including those coming from the president's team.
As President Trump has noted, and he's absolutely right about this, if you're not verifying signatures, if you're following the rules of Stacey Abrams, who refused to concede, who still thinks she's the governor of Georgia, how good, in fact, is your recount?
Georgia's Secretary of State's office says it has a multi-step process to verify signatures and says its own audit helped the president's numbers here in Georgia. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Meanwhile, a far-left group linked to Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez now urging Joe Biden to ignore Congress and push through their economic agenda, including the Green New Deal.
In a statement, they say if President Biden is able to rise to this moment, he can create millions of good, high-wage jobs in every community across the country, bringing this country out of the current economic depression to be better and stronger than ever before, and he doesn't need the Senate to do it.
Yes, the best thing to do to get us out of depression is destroy millions of oil and gas jobs. And remember, the problem is he is not for the new Green Deal. Let's bring in Stuart Varney. He got up early for us. He's on Varney and Company. He starts at 9. He's going to go for at least 3 hours. Stuart, do you think this is Joe Biden saying to himself, what a great idea. Let's go do this thing through executive fiat. I'll just implement AOC's a new Green Deal.
Well, look, let's get real, shall we? This is an AOC-linked group. Right. And basically, they've got a socialist agenda. They want to tell the incoming president to issue an executive order to tell the Federal Reserve, get out there and print trillions of dollars. We'll then take that money and apply it to approved investments like in green energy, Green New Deal, stop the car companies from producing anything but electric vehicles. That's what they want to do. An executive order from the president telling the Fed to print that money and we'll take it and we will invest it. It's nonsense. For a start, this shows the Democrats' weakness in the last election. They don't have the Senate, probably. Speaker Pelosi's majority in the House is vastly reduced, so they're turning to the incoming president and saying, issue executive orders. I've got news for you. No executive order can tell the Federal Reserve to print trillions of dollars. Yeah. You can't do that. The Fed is independent. This is a measure of the socialist weakness, actually, because they're demanding something which they cannot get. And they're not going to get it. Socialism, actually, is in decline here.
Yeah. Stuart, as you know, because you're sitting here in New York City schools closed today because they hit the 3% 7-day rolling average on coronavirus positive rates. So a lot of parents are going to be working from home. Yep. However, and you know, Ainsley was just talking to somebody a couple of minutes ago where a teacher was working from out in the woods and they didn't have electricity. Deutsche Bank is actually coming up with a great idea, thinks that people should pay a 5% privilege tax for working from home. And I see you touching your head. It looks like your head is about to explode.
Yes. What did you say? You think it's a great idea? Get out of here, Steve Doocy. Come on.
I'm saying Deutsche Bank thought it was a great idea.
Well, it's a German bank, right? Very susceptible to neo-European socialism. And we don't want anything to do with that. I think the exact opposite. I think that if you're working from home and you're helping your family in this time of crisis, you don't want to see a pay cut. That's absolutely wrong. We should be encouraging people to stay at home, take care of the family in a time of emergency.
Tax credit.
Yeah, whatever you want to do, but don't tax them and then say you're going to redistribute that money to lower paid people who have to go to work.
But Stuart, what if your company is better off with people in the office and people just don't want to come in? They want to wear shorts and stare out the window.
Well, do you tax them for
well,
staying?
How else are you going to get them in?
Ooh.
Well, you can tell them, if you don't come in, you don't work for this company. I mean, you could say that.
You could do that?
Yeah, you could do that.
So they're actually giving them a third way.
Well, do you like it, Brian?
Yeah,
I don't.
because people got to come back to work. And if Deutsche Bank wants, if Deutsche Bank needs people at work, and they're going to make, if they're going to make the environment safe, they got to come back to work. We got to get the economy going again.
The objective of Deutsche Bank is not to get people back in the office. The objective of Deutsche Bank is this semi-socialist idea of redistributing their money.
I don't know.
I'm not for it.
It seems like they're trying to get people to go to work again.
We're here to be different of opinions here, Brian. You're right. I'm right. You're wrong.
Okay.
Stuart, thank you so much for coming on with us. We'll be watching your show, Varney and Company. It's on Fox Business. It's every weekday from 9 to 12. It competes with Brian's radio show.
Yes, and sometimes I go on. I used to go on Stuart's show. We do a simulcast.
Brian, you don't do that radio show from home, do you?
Nope. Right here, 15th floor.
Saving 5%.
Yes.
Going to work. All right. Thanks, guys. All right, some conservatives are so fed up with Oregon that they want to succeed from the state and help form Greater Idaho. We're going to speak with one of the leaders of that movement. That's straight ahead.